Bub Report. Now, our neighbors to the south in Trinidad and Tobago, the new prime minister there, Prime Minister Stuart Young, called for an early general election a day after taking office in what some observers deemed as a surprise move, seen as an effort to secure his own mandate in the Twin Island Republic. Now, the Prime Minister advised Trinidad and Tobago's president to dissolve the country's parliament and schedule a general election for the 28th of April. Of course, Young previously served as the Minister of Energy in the Keith Rowley-led administration. He took office after former Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley stepped down after nearly a decade serving in the role of Prime Minister of the Twin Island Republic. Now, it will be the first election after the Elections and Boundaries Commission in Trinidad and Tobago withdrew the lines for 16 constituencies and renamed 5 constituencies, respectively. Now, 17 political parties and 3 independents will also contest the election. Now, this election is being held against the backdrop of a perennial state of emergency declared by the previous Prime Minister, a continued issue of crime, a cost of living and inflation crisis, and of course, geopolitical tensions that places Trinidad and Tobago's energy security squarely in the crosshairs of an internecine battle between the United States and Venezuela, and so much more issues that are animating this election cycle. Now, one of the parties that was scheduled to contest the 2025 election was the Honesty, Opportunity, Empowerment, and Performance Party, or HOPE. Now, according to the party's website, quote, HOPE is committed to serving the people of our country with respect and dignity, valuing the sacredness of all life. We champion freedom, well-being, and meritocracy, providing equal opportunities for all individuals to reach their full potential, unquote. Now, however, in March, the party announced its decision to withdraw from the race, acknowledging that despite 5 years of engaging with communities across the Twin Island Republic, it could not establish a viable path to victory. Now, here to make sense of the ongoing election cycle in Trinidad and Tobago is the political leader of HOPE. That's Mr. Timothy Hamel-Smith. At this time, we're happy to be joined by Mr. Smith, who is joining us on the Bub Report for the first time. Of course, in the past, we also had the opportunity to speak with Ms. Karen Nunes-Teixeira, who is also a member of the party. Mr. Smith, welcome to this week's edition of the Bub Report, sir.
Thanks very much. I'm very happy to be here with the Bub Report. Look forward to big things.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, our closest neighbors to the north, culturally and otherwise, the election is really heating up. The rhetoric is also heating up, I see. But talk to us, first of all, Mr. Smith, about the third-party case for providing an alternative to the 2 main parties. Of course, when Mrs. Teixeira appeared on the Bub Report, we were of the impression that there was going to be some measure of alliance between yourself and perhaps the UNC and the NTA. So can you articulate what occurred that caused this alliance to not come together in the way that perhaps you were hoping?
I didn't hear exactly what Mrs. Karen Teixeira Nunes had said.
Yes.
But we did have a strategy that where we felt we could focus on 5 constituencies. Mm-hmm. And if one won at least 3, then no other party, because the truth is we didn't plant ourselves to believe we could win the entire election. We understood our limitations. Mm-hmm. But we felt if we won even just 3 seats, that would enable us to, no party would be able to form the government. Mm-hmm. And therefore, one or other of the other parties would either need to join with us or call another election. Mm-hmm. Or for that matter, of course, you have Tobago also on the fringe that carries 2 constituencies. They might come to play a part in it. And that was the strategy. Admittedly, we weren't expecting Mr. Young to call election the day after he had
I've been sworn in.
Prime Minister.
I think that was sort of like catching your opponents with your pants down, is what they say.
I don't know, I mean, looking at events, certainly admittedly, I think Hope did not expect that. Our expectations is that Mr. Young would have wanted a 3-month window in which to prove himself as Prime Minister and how he could perform. The suspicions are that perhaps there was a leadership struggle. And if that continued, perhaps, that might create more disharmony within the PNM. And this is just our guesswork. And therefore, he felt earlier rather than later, let me strike while the iron is hot. And he called the election right away. And sometimes, you wonder, is there a power struggle still ensuing in the PNM? I don't know the answer to that, but what you see, it's surprising that I think he's been put forward, at least up to this point, as, Mr. Young being the person who will take Trinidad by storm, as it were. And I think that's an error on his part. We're a plural society. To put himself forward, being perhaps not of the same ethnic origin as his party compatriots, that, I would have thought it made sense to have a couple other people to the forefront with him. So I looked at that from the outside, and you wonder, is there a struggle still going on within the PNM? I don't know the answer.
Well, I mean, because
on the other hand, took the, got the front, became front runners. So that was surprising. They were ready.
Yeah, but I still find it a curiosity that even though Dr. Rowley did, and of course in the region, he's given credit for stepping down after serving 2 terms and saying, you know what, I'm not going to stay here, except he does continue to remain the political leader of the party, which going into an election cycle, you would think that the political leader of the party, as usually is the case, would be the one as a political party to then go on to advise the Governor General, or in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, the President, to form the government. But this is not what we're seeing here. We're seeing a sort of a two-headed leadership going into this election cycle. Your thoughts on that?
I thought it was a brilliant strategy in terms of what you recognized was that the angst of the public was, the thrust of it was against himself, Dr. Rowley personally. I think Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, who was the Minister of National Security, and the Minister of Finance, Colm Imbert.
Yes.
Those are the 3 people focused on what they found wrong with the government. Those 3 persons represented the thrust of the anger against them. Once you took that out of the equation, then the anger tended to dissipate. I think that's a reality of what happened. Ultimately, Dr. Rowley left, Hines was sidelined, and Mr. Imbert demoted.
From Minister of Finance, I saw that, yeah.
That was a smart move, I think. Looking on from the sidelines, I thought, hey, this was a good move. As it turned out, the UNC seemed to be more prepared for an election than the PNM thought they would be. And they took advantage of the vacuum, as it were, that were created by the absence of Dr. Rowley. And you'll notice he wasn't there in the first half, if you like,
of the campaign. I noticed that.
About to do battle because they're I think the PNM are panicking somewhat, and they brought him back into the center, center in order to take the battle to the UNC, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's as I read it in terms of what's going on.
Yeah. Now let us talk about the opposition, the UNC, and of course, in the context of Trinidad and Tobago, we know that in order to compete with the People's National Movement, which is so deeply entrenched into the body politic of Trinidadian society, that alliance building is the formula that tends to win the day. Of course, you were part of a previous alliance with the previous UNC that won the election, and that was back in 2010. And of course, the NAR, the National Alliance for Reconstruction, their alliance led to a clean sweep at that time. So are we going to be seeing now, perhaps in this election cycle or the conclusion of this election cycle, that another alliance might in fact win the day, notwithstanding the leadership imperfections that the political leader of the UNC has, of course, in the way that she has also conducted the internal affairs of her own party.
So she did reach out, as you notice, they now say the UNC and the coalition of interests.
Yes.
So she's brought in figures from the labor movement. She's brought in the political party PEP. She brought in the political party COP, and she framed that as a coalition of interests, as opposed to what, the People's Partnership. Whether that is successful depends on how the electorate view it. Mm-hmm. I do think, honestly, looking on, I think the UNC have the momentum. There's a week to go again. Yeah. In politics, things can change dramatically.
A week is a lifetime in politics.
It is. But I think, looking on, I think the UNC have the momentum, hence the sense of panic coming from the PNM and pulling Dr. Rowley out of retirement, shall we say, because he had said, I'm not going to take part in this. They're pulling out all stops and foreign exchange, for instance, for example, was an issue among people saying we can't get the foreign exchange to go on a holiday, to carry on business. And today, or was it yesterday, there was announced that a window would be open for them, so that they appreciate that has been a hindrance to them. Many people would look at askew to say, well, 10 days before the election, you've now realized people have been complaining for 2 years, and you try to fill a window by doing that. I personally think that is contrary to good electoral practice. A government, which really is a caretaker government, once the election bell has rung, ought not to produce programs or promotions that are done purely for the purpose of winning votes. Mm-hmm. But of course, they hold the reins of government. I don't think it sets a good example. It's strange. This will happen now. The PNM have done it. And if the UNC does it 5 years from now, the exact same thing, if they were to win, everybody would be up in arms. But who started the trend? And I do think there's a need for some independent voice to say, look, this goes beyond what is acceptable. And we need to have some guardrails about this, so as your politics descends into the gutter, as it were, and doesn't serve the country well.
And you mentioned the foreign exchange, but one of the things also that I made note of with Prime Minister Young was the compensation to the victims of the Paria tragedy, the families. And I'm saying, you're waiting until an election, and of course Dr. Rowley didn't do it because Dr. Rowley, again, he's known, at least his public posture is known for somebody who sticks to the book. He's a by the book kind of guy, right? And he was going to allow the insurance and all of the litigation to happen before even broaching a question of compensation. But here's Mr. Young coming out a couple of weeks before the election, offering that compensation to the divers. Is that something that you also followed as well?
Yeah, I think that, we have a council, as you have in Grenada, a council, I don't know what you call yours, but for political responsibility, electoral responsibility. Mm-hmm. And these are issues I think they should be taken up. Mm-hmm. Because if you let it slide on this occasion, you will continue to have it slide, and you get, you get more into a morass down the road where do what you like is what it becomes. And I don't think that was right to have an ex gratia payment coming out of $1 million each. I think the families must be grateful for it, no doubt.
Yeah.
But 3 years or what after the event, you pull it out of the hat like a magician just before elections are due to take place. I don't think that is proper. I don't think, for instance, there was in the Newsday, there was a 28-page supplement, not 1 page, not 2 pages, 28 pages, because part of the attack on the PNM is you did nothing in the last 5 years. So to counter that, they came out with this supplement of 28 pages of saying, these are the things we did for you. And that would cross every possible boundary of what is proper practice. You don't do that. And that came out 2 days ago. The truth is, Hope did send out because we felt it's our duty to send the signal, this is not proper behavior. And if you don't mark the spot now, it's going to descend into chaos at some point.
Yeah. Now let us talk about your political organization, Mr. Smith, in the context of alliance building. Why did your your conversations with the UNC and other alliances not come to fruition in order to come into that coalition building that was required?
Well, that's a question you would better place before the UNC, I suspect. My inclinations, because they had approached us in November last year, we put forward what we saw as our vision and our policies, and maybe they didn't seem comfortable with what we had to put forward. I don't know. That's just guessing. But they obviously thought that the policies that we had, including a 180-day policy that involved how do you bring the crime under control, how do you bring corruption under control, how do you improve the criminal justice system, and how do you start back up the economy so that jobs are created, so that one can feel comfortable once more that you can seek to get jobs that would be fulfilling, and the reskilling and the upskilling associated with having to make that turnaround, and the cultural change that is needed in order to reach there. And perhaps our policies weren't quite what one felt that could gel with his UNC. I don't know. I can't speak for them.
Did you also have any conversations with Mr. Griffith, Mr. Gary Griffith?
Oh yeah, we do have.
That's the
we
NTA.
have been having lots of conversations, both with Mr. Griffith and the COP as well. We had formed, we had a memorandum of understanding between them. So we've been meeting for maybe 9 months. Mr. Griffith, his NTA does have, I think it's 17 at last count that he has representatives in this election. So that, in fact, just moments ago, I heard one of his trucks passing in my area. Vote for NTA.
Yes.
So that he is there in the battle. Michaela Pandey of the Patriotic Front is also putting forward her position. The truth is, at the end of the day, the two major political parties are what I suspect will, hold the major ground. Of course, Tobago is a different case. I don't know what's going to happen.
Will Tobago be a wild horse, a wild card in this race, sir?
So that has a different dimension to it.
Because the Tobago party is not saying that they're officially aligned with the UNC, and I found it interesting that the UNC did not declare any candidates for the Tobago seats. So,
traditionally they haven't. It doesn't surprise me that they didn't have. I don't think anybody would have been surprised.
Right.
What if I was sitting on the Tobago side of it? I think they're doing the right thing. We don't want to form any coalition with anybody. Let us speak after the election. Then, of course, you have more. You have more leverage, to be honest with you, to say, well, look, And from a Tobago perspective, they want to have, much more power in terms of how their THA is fronted. Tobago has felt for many, many years now that they've got the sticky end of the wicket, as it were, and they would like to see legislation promoted. It does require a special majority. So without the help of either one of the major parties, it doesn't happen. But that would be part of their agenda. The growth and development of Tobago, I imagine, must be part of their agenda. But I think either party wanting to form a coalition with that Tobago party, assuming it won 2 seats, Tobago will be in a much better position to have mechanisms, policies, provisions which support Tobago. So, it makes absolutely good sense, sitting from where I sit, that they should want to await the outcome of the election.
A wait and see game there, because of course, in the context of the THA elections, that was a clean sweep that shell shocked the PNM, I suppose.
It moved so dramatically. If you need to look at the history of what happened, because there was an earlier election that was a tie. So that, and Dr. Rowley's response to that was that let's have some more constituencies. And that was superimposed upon Tobago. In many ways, I think the whitewash that occurred was a response to that. Tobago people don't want to be dominated, and a solution was imposed upon them without any discussion with them. And Tobago as a whole takes, I think, great umbrage to somebody, imposing a solution for them. And one would have thought, frankly, the PNM would have been better off if perhaps proportional representation had been put forward. It's amazing that, over 60% of the workers are employed with the THA. I mean, that's a huge percentage for any government to control. And therefore, once you control the THA, you control a lot of other things like how people vote. But that doesn't bode well for a country developing as it should. You need to empower your people, and make work schemes do not empower people to go out there and create something for themselves where they have a sense of fulfillment.
Self-reliance, as opposed to depending, as opposed to that, they call it the dependency syndrome, always having to depend on the good graces of a politician.
Grenada is 6 square miles larger than Tobago,
yes,
and yet you're far advanced of Tobago. Why should that be? There's no reason other than the fact you've made people dependent through that make-work system. And that's happening to Trinidad as well. But of course, when
with the CPEP program, I believe,
it's really devastating. It's as bad as having a hurricane hit you.
Right. So let us talk about the geopolitics, because of course Trinidad has now been thrust into the geopolitics of the United States around the Dragon gas deal, but more so around the threats of the sanctions. We did see those very the formula, quite frankly, did not make sense according to most economists. The way that in which the formula for the tariffs, not sanctions, were calculated, and of course Trinidad is also thrust in that, because Trinidad got one of the higher rates of sanctions with Guyana. But of course, that has now been put on pause until, according to the White House occupant, until folks go and negotiate with him and whatnot. We don't know what the outcome of that will be. But let us talk about those geopolitics, and whoever wins the next election in Trinidad and Tobago, they will certainly be treating with Trinidad's energy security, but also the questions of trade, not only with Trinidad and Tobago and the United States, but with CARICOM in general. So talk about those two geopolitical issues and what Trinidad and Tobago should be doing to treat with those issues, especially as it relates to Trinidad and Tobago's energy security in the hydrocarbon sector?
Yeah. So the Dragon field is absolutely vital to Trinidad and Tobago. Without it, we are losing. We don't have sufficient gas to operate all our LNG plants, but also our petrochemical plants. And more than 50% of our GDP is arrived at the revenue from those streams, that energy sector. A loss of that is disastrous to Trinidad and Tobago. So one can understand why Dragon Field, which is a huge field that goes across the territorial seas of Venezuela and Trinidad, Venezuela having the bigger, maybe 2/3 part of it. Mm-hmm. And it is vital. I think that the PNM went around it the wrong way to have what I think is surreptitious discussions with Venezuela in order to achieve a contract and then try to impose it on the United States. Obviously, I think Mr. Trump hasn't taken kindly to that. And there is a better approach to achieving that. I don't think you can go this, and no doubt, that Secretary Rubio, when he met with Mr. Young, mm-hmm. identified for him that, how could you bring in the vice president during, despite the sanctions, during the middle of COVID, trying to do it surreptitiously without anybody knowing. The truth is, the world is an open book. Somebody's going to find out, and they have. And that has backfired on them. But
Mr. Smith, at the end of the day, both Venezuela and Trinidad are sovereign countries. What business is the United States to be dictating to two sovereign countries how they should be conducting their business? I do understand with the sanctions, and some may say that the sanctions that the U.S. imposed not only on Venezuela now, but also on Cuba, a lot of those sanctions, some might say, are just hypocritical, because here you have relations with countries that are much, much more repressive than Cuba and Venezuela, like Saudi Arabia.
Right. You're perfectly right. We're a sovereign nation.
Yeah.
But as a sovereign nation, you have to decide how to achieve your objective. Mm-hmm. And I think there were better ways of doing that.
Okay.
We need to persuade United States that it's in the interest of United States to allow this to go through. We need to use all our diplomatic efforts, whether through third-party nations, because some points are not as well made by you, by Trinidad and Tobago, as by some third party that perhaps might be recognized by the United States as a party who can help bargain on your behalf. Because ultimately, if Trinidad and Tobago slides dramatically, as I say, the loss of Dragon Field may do that, then we get closer and closer to becoming like Haiti. And if you become that, where are your people likely to go? And that imposes another burden on the United States. So there's a self-interest on the part of the United States to make sure that doesn't happen. But that takes upfront negotiations. That takes understanding of their position. Even, you may be a sovereign nation, but we play in a world that doesn't necessarily play fair.
This is also true, and we've seen that play out.
And therefore you need to win at this, and there are different ways to win at something. There's different ways to skin the goat, they say.
Yes,
and you have to do it smart, as opposed to bullishly. And you mentioned that Dr. Rowley tends to go by the book and say, "Well, I'm sovereign; I'll do what I please." But it didn't please somebody, and there are
and then a lot of the energy players in the region are also U.S. based companies.
That's
which
the
is
conundrum
another
we fall into.
Yes.
Trinidad doesn't have its own exploration group. We tried that basically with Trinidad, backfired on us seriously. So despite the fact that we've been in oil and gas for, well, oil certainly for 100 years, and we've developed a lot of expertise, a lot of technical expertise, but it takes really deep pockets to produce oil. I mean, you know, the other day, BP turned up a dry hole after spending 100 million. That's not pocket change, you know. So imagine the kind of deep pocket you have to take that sort of risk. And therefore, you know, around the world, the big players who have that sort of deep pocket are the ones who can go after oil and gas, for that matter. And yes, as a small country, 1.4 million people, we are minute in comparison, and we just don't have those deep pockets. So we develop, and we tend to we'll lose it over a period of time, because people will leave our shores if there's no more oil and gas industry. So it's vital to us from multiple different components.
Yes, absolutely. Now let us talk about the next 5 years and perhaps the next decade, really, and the future of Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, you know, this election is also being held against the backdrop of a state of emergency. I don't think I got any announcement saying that at least the national community in Trinidad, or even those of us in the Caribbean and Grenada who visit Trinidad from time to time, heard any announcement that the state of emergency ended.
Yeah, well, it just expired. It didn't end.
It expired.
Our system requires you to go back to Parliament and get, and I think this time, a 3/5 majority to continue the state of emergency. So they just allowed it to dissipate, as it were. And that's what happened. There's no more state of emergency on. To my mind, it obviously was introduced purely because this was they knew what the plan was. You wanted to bring down the murder numbers just for the election and claim victory and say, you know, look, we've won that war against, you know, what people look at the murder rate as being reflective of how well you are not doing in that arena. So that was part of the plan, as it were, to achieve that. I don't think it succeeded. I mean, most people would say best, if anything, it's temporary. You know, you might get a slight hiatus in it. But it's there. We have to take a far more long-term view. You see, this is not just about getting rid of gangs today, because as Dr. Rowley would say, our schools are factories to churn out, or as he last mentioned, is a conveyor belt just churning out students ready-made for gangs. And he's right. So what is the intervention? And that's why I'm saying that sometimes you have to look at the underlying causes to determine how are you going to intervene. Yes, you have to intervene frontally. Absolutely no doubt about that. We can't wait until tomorrow. In fact, if you fail to bring crime under control, then business, the economy cannot grow. I mean, this is, you know, it's that direct impact. And it's so absolutely necessary to frontally face the gang warfare that is going now. And you have to bring that under control. But long term, you need to do something about our education system. In fact, what Hope says, you actually need to start, particularly in challenged communities, at infancy, because the damage is being caused very often at infancy because of this toxic stress in which these infants in challenged communities can be brought up. And then you have to intervene. You know, we had these wonderful watchwords: production, tolerance, discipline. You know, our national anthem says, together we aspire, together we achieve. Wonderful stuff. We take it out once a year and we dust it. And this is a lesson for Grenada too. Lesson for any country. You take it out once a year, you dust it off.
Any developing country, yes.
But as a developing country, we needed to ingrain that into the education system.
Yeah.
And one of the wonderful forms that we have to do that is through the art forms. Imagine you could get soccer to really be the vehicle to take that value system into the schools. I don't know about you, but to my mind, when you hear good soccer, it enters the heart and spirit and changes.
Oh, absolutely. It does. I mean, if you
remember words from when I was, 9 years old.
Yeah. And they have so many positive examples of that, right? In the context of Trinidad, you have the newest sensation, Young Brother, for example, right?
Exactly, perfectly right.
Who comes from one of those under-resourced communities. Absolutely. But here you have somebody who is positive, who young people look up to, right? Who has done nothing but really extolled a good example for what a young person can do positively without getting into the gangs and all of those things.
Yeah. And we must have that engineered into our school system. Yeah. I mean, not only soccer, we must use art, we must use drama, we must use essays, we must use competitions. The children at primary school, they love mascots. They listen to a mascot, a nice fuzzy character, before they would listen to any adult telling them a lot of the same stuff. Yeah. You have to be, that's a kind of entry that you need to make in the education system, where what you're really doing is changing the culture. And we do have the talent to do it. Just nobody. It takes a government with the resources, with the understanding you need to re-engineer the education system. We need, we're focusing on this rote learning type of thing, whereas AI is upon us.
Yes.
And AI is going to transform the world like nothing else. This is not just the industrial revolution you're talking about here.
Yeah.
So we're trying to prepare children for jobs that don't yet exist. Can you imagine? And how you do that is A for apple, B for bat. It don't work.
And we were having that conversation in last week's edition of the Bub Report as well. Yeah. And it's an issue. We have a serious skills gap in Grenada as well. I mean, the World Bank published a report on...
We need to focus on that character education and reskilling and upskilling our young people. Technology, if the youngsters love video, but you can get into a $1 trillion industry if in fact you focus on making apps, making videos that go viral. What are we doing to make this, the bread and butter of our education system? There's a transformative opportunity for all of the Caribbean to be leaders in these fields.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Smith, any final comments from you, sir? This was a very important. We do hope to have you back on the program. One of my producers, he always watches you on, I believe it's a CNC Morning Brew program,
right?
Whenever you appear there, and of course, Mrs. Teixeira, the conversations that the issues that you bring forward are so refreshing. So we're happy to have you again. But over to you, sir, for some closing comments.
Yeah, well, very happy to be here on the Bub Report. I mean, it's been a great opportunity. In terms of, I can't predict the election if anybody's thinking, that's always tough. But a lot, I think, turns on the outcome of this election as to how we go forward. I would, one of the things, if I may say, Hope has said, all right, we're not participating in the electoral process. That doesn't mean we don't have a political agenda, as it were. So we are creating a website which will come across more as a think tank to say to people, free to use, these are the kinds of policies we feel you need to integrate and make part of the country system. This is how we need to look at the criminal justice system, for instance, and map it out from the time you carry out an investigation to arrest, to being brought before the prosecution, before the court, a trial, punishment if you go to prison. All of these things, because something is missing when you have to find 10 and 12 years become the norm from start to finish for so many cases. Then your criminal justice system is not swift justice. Mm-hmm. And that's what you need. So, one needs to look deeply at these issues and see where are those missing links that are causing it to fall apart. So I can throw out to you one example. Simply the very AI digital revolution that is taking place. Mm-hmm. I don't know about Grenada, but so often you hear in Trinidad and Tobago that the file went missing. Well, the file couldn't go missing if, in fact, we had it digitized, and so that it moved in digital form from investigation to arrest to charging to the court to the sentence to the prison to the outcome from the prison. And in the prison itself, that is a great opportunity, unfortunate as it may be, to re-educate people, to give them something to live for beyond prison. We don't do it. We don't do it, and we don't do it. That what better opportunity is there? Because they have to attend, and I've spoken to people who've been through that system, who've used that opportunity to become better. That when they've emerged, to become better people willing to give
rehabilitated citizens. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Yeah. You need leadership. Ultimately, that's, and people have to think deeply, not just on what is on the surface, but deeply into what is causing, what are the root causes of the problem, and how do we engineer that to make a difference in the future. Mm-hmm. In Trinidad and Tobago and in the Caribbean, it's the same journey that we have.
Yes. Yep. Our legacies, our histories are all intertwined. And a lot of the issues are the same there. So, Mr. Hamel-Smith, thank you so much for appearing on the Bub Report this week, sir.
Very happy to be here. Look forward to an opportunity again.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, this is the Bub Report. We just ended a conversation with the political leader of the Hope Party in Trinidad and Tobago. And while they're not contesting this year's election, Mr. Hamel-Smith was able to provide some good context for us here in Grenada in respect of the issues that are animating the 2025 election in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, that election happening on the 28th of April, which is just in a week's time. We should know whether or not, a week and a day really, who the next Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago will be in this era. Folks, stand by and we will take a quick break and come back as we have a panel segment of the week on the state of agriculture and food security in Grenada. So please stand by for that conversation.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bub Report. We're happy that you can stay with us. Of course, we do know that it is Easter Sunday, and it's also Carifta weekend. So those of you who are still staying with us, we're happy that you're still here. So we do want to hear from you. Where are you watching us from this Sunday? We have Leonard Grenade saying Happy Easter. Good morning, sir, and Happy Easter to you as well. Lydia James is saying a blessed Sunday to all. Happy Easter. Then we have Arthur Langine. Good Easter Sunday morning. Onika St. John is also wishing us a happy Easter there. Let's see who else we have. We have Joan Brathwaite Batson. Good morning, Ms. Batson. Thank you for watching the Bub Report this week. Of course, we know that, as I said before, this is Carifta weekend, and Team Grenada is already giving a good show of themselves down there in Trinidad and Tobago. So we're very pleased with their performance so far on the heels of what many are saying was one of the most successful intercalls we've had in a long time. Ernesto Jose is saying that he started his day with a bottle of coconut water with lemon in the gym on 2 hours of the gym for 2 hours, 2 teaspoons of sea moss raw, and now he's having breakfast. So thank you there. Margaret is saying Happy Easter. Marcel Belma saying Happy Easter season. Narissa is saying Happy Easter to all, and she's watching from the United States of America. So folks, just give us a roll call. Tell us which part of the world you are so that we can give you a shout out. Of course, we're going to go on now to the second part of this morning's conversation, and that has to do with agriculture and food security in the age of Trump and tariffs, and in the age of climate change, water security challenges, and food security capacity issues, of course, issues around the food import bill. But I want to tee up this conversation by citing an editorial, an op-ed that was written by a Grenadian resident in the United States by the name of Mr. Michael Roberts. And this is what Mr. Michael Roberts says about the current environment in which we are in, about the economic implications of the threats of tariffs. He's saying this: the immediate impact will be higher costs for U.S. importers of Caribbean goods such as rum, seafood, coffee, and manufactured products. This could reduce demand, shrink profit margins for Caribbean businesses, and lead to significant job losses due to price hikes passed on to U.S. consumer. For example, Grenada's agricultural exports, including nutmeg and cocoa, may face reduced competitiveness, exacerbating economic strain in a region where tourism and exports are important lifelines. Guyana, facing a steeper 38% tariff due to its oil exports, highlights the disproportionate burden on resource-dependent economies. And of course, he goes on to talk about the food security implications with respect to our own food import bill in Grenada and the Caribbean, and what that may look like in an inflationary environment. So we want to get into this conversation. How are we in Grenada treating with this new challenge that we have to confront in the agricultural sector, which is supposed to be the breadbasket of the state of Grenada? I do want to make the point that we did invite the Minister of Agriculture by way of the press secretary. However, the press secretary indicated that the permanent secretary would represent the minister because the minister would not be available today. However, this morning, we do not have the permanent secretary. However, we have Lauren St. Louis here, Miss Lauren St. Louis, who is the acting chief extension officer. She's an acting chief extension officer, the acting chief extension officer, not Anne, in the Ministry of Agriculture, who is joining us today. So we want to bring in the panel, and we have to make this point that the chief extension officer cannot answer policy questions. Those should have been directed at the minister. So I want us to caveat this as we're getting into this conversation, as I welcome the panel. Ms. St. Louis, welcome to the Bub Report. We also have Senator Roderick St. Clair, who is the farmers' representative in the upper house of Grenada's parliament. And of course, we have Mr. Michael Batiste, who is a former Minister of Agriculture and leader of the opposition. And on a personal note, he is also my cousin. Michael, I don't think Grenadians may want to label me by virtue of my association with you, but so be it. Family is family at the end of the day. So panelists, happy Easter to all of you.
Good morning.
Okay, Michael, we're still getting an echo from you. We have to figure that out now. Just give me, we're going to sort out Michael's audio issue here. It's a feedback we're getting. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the Bub Report, and a happy Easter to both of you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning and happy Easter to you and to my fellow panelists, and of course to your audience who are listening to today.
Yes, absolutely. Senator, you as well. Welcome to the program, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bob, for having me join this program this morning. And of course, I want to say good morning to Lorraine and of course, my good friend, Brother Batiste. And of course, all the listening public, I want to wish you a happy Easter, fun-filled weekend, safe, and be energized for the rest of the year.
Absolutely. Yes, Michael, let's see if we can hear you better now. We're getting an echo. I'm not too sure because you're logged in twice, but go ahead, sir. Let's see if we can hear you now.
Pleasant.
All right, Michael, give me 1 second. Let me remove this one. All right, go ahead now, Michael. Go ahead.
Pleasant morning to everyone.
Good morning.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
I must indeed say, when I was invited to participate in this program, I readily agreed. Looking forward to a very interesting discussion on agriculture. However, I must say that I am a little uncomfortable discussing agriculture because matters of a political nature would pop up. And I feel that the acting extension officer, Ms. St. Louis, very knowledgeable and hardworking public officer, I think it is inappropriate for me to participate in such a discussion, putting her in a very uncomfortable position. It is with great regrets that I'm learning now that the Minister of Agriculture has backed out, and so too is the public officer. So, Dr. Bob, out of respect for you, the program, and the listening audience, I beg to be excused from the program because my utterances today would be of a political nature, and it would be uncomfortable to discuss that with a public officer, knowing the rules of the Public Service Commission, where public officers are not supposed to be engaged in partisan or political matters of any nature. So please,
I do understand, and I do respect that, because again, the public officers, they're not the ones who make policy. The public officers are merely enforcers of policy. The policymakers are the ones who can answer to certain questions. So I do respect that choice you've made today, sir.
thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. And again, folks, Mr. Batiste has begged to be excused from this week's program owing to the fact that the Minister of Agriculture isn't here, and neither is the Permanent Secretary. Of course, the Minister of Agriculture did indicate that he was not going to be able to appear on the program today. So that is why we do not have the Minister of Agriculture here. But certainly, nonetheless, the issues that we need to raise in respect of what's happening in agriculture and food security is critical and important. So we do want to get on with the conversation. And Senator St. Clair, before I begin with you, Ms. St. Louis, I want to start with you. We are now in, of course, the dry season, and we've, the farmers obviously view this as a very challenging time, but we also have the continued issue of praedial larceny. in the agricultural sector. So let us start there by talking about, yes, government has a desire to ensure that we have a robust food security ecosystem. But the challenge here is that we have these issues of praedial larceny, climate change, and on top of that, threats of tariffs. And before that, we've had issues of inflation. All of those issues are affecting the state of agriculture in Grenada. So can you talk about those variables against the backdrop of your desire to ensure that we have a robust food security in the country?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bob.
Yes.
In terms of food security, I think we seem to most of the time take an approach of it being a reaction to something, instead of us having a systematic program where we can continually build on our food production and the other aspects of food security. So instead of always having to react to what is happening, I think we should really take a long-term deep dive into what is happening with our food production, with our marketing strategies, with the linkages that the system should have within it, and look at it as an entire food system. And then we won't always have to react, always have to try to find a solution to external or even internal shocks or internal, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
In terms of, you asked about praedial larceny, that is one of the most vexing problems or issues that affects agriculture now. And I don't think it's not a new thing, but we are trying to really ramp up especially the presence of our praedial larceny officers. So just in the last week or so, we would have engaged in interviews so that we can have 40 new officers join the praedial larceny unit. We also have we have kind of changed how the praedial larceny unit would work, and so the praedial larceny unit will now be housed with the extension division, so that they are going to be present and ready to move. We're going to equip them with whatever the equipment and stuff that they need, so that they will be able to to get that done. On the other side, we're also looking at the Praedial Larceny Act, the Crop Compensation Act. We have a deadline actually of the end of May to ensure that those are completed or ready for review, so that we can get all of those parts of that part of the system together, so that they can work together.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the praedial larceny officers that are being hired now. I did see a request. I did see some postings about that as advertised. Will these praedial larceny officers be given some measure of law enforcement powers? And why is it they're not attached to the Royal Grenada Police Force? As I do understand that the Royal Grenada Police Force does have a praedial larceny unit as well. So how is that going to be augmenting what the RGPF does, and why is there a need for these separate officers from what the RGPF does?
Okay, so it's not a separate unit. It's one praedial larceny unit.
Okay.
Currently, the praedial larceny officers are housed with the Royal Grenada Police Force. But what happens, unlike what happens with the fire station, for example, with those officers that are firefighters, if the regular police force needs support in any way, the praedial larceny officers are called on to do that work. And therefore, a lot of times they are not available to carry out praedial larceny work. So it's not that we're making two praedial larceny units. We are simply going to be housed differently. Additionally, the praedial larceny officers are going to be trained by the police force. Now, in order for the praedial larceny officers to have powers of arrest and that sort of thing, that is a different conversation that would have to happen between the Minister for National Security and the Minister for Agriculture in order to pass on that kind of power on to the praedial larceny officers. But it's something that is being discussed, and we are hopeful that will be something that, because it's a legal matter, it's something that we have to work out, because they're not actual police officers, they're public officers, but they can be given the powers of arrest.
And Senator Sinclair, again, welcome to the Broad Report again, sir. But let us talk about this again. I teed up this conversation by referencing the challenges that Grenada's agricultural sector has to deal with internally, specifically around the issue of water shortages, around the issue of praedial larceny, which is a big one. And we cannot be having these rosy conversations about where we need to go about food security without addressing the challenges that our farmers have. And before we are even able to get to a place of a parity with respect to balancing the food import bill against what is being locally consumed, there has to be the question of addressing these vexing concerns. Senator Sinclair?
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
go ahead.
you, Dr.
Yes, sir.
Bob. Yes, thank you, Dr. Bob. Yes, most definitely. And I want to make a precursor to what I'm going to say, because sometimes it appears to the general public that farmers are always making noise, they always want some help, and the private business people, they don't come for no help, and what the hell happened to this farmer? They only come crying. We need to understand that, one, these are risky business. Two, we have to understand the issue of food security is national security and existence of a country. And so without our farmers, we can ask ourselves what it would be. Without food, we can ask ourselves what it can be. And so as any good father, any good parent, which the government takes on that role as a public good, need to ensure that the nation has food. And if there is no food in the country, the government still has an obligation. And so we have to commend the farmers, all of them, for participating in this very important initiative. And so whatever support that they can be given is very important. You are speaking about 10,000 plus farmers, fisher folks involved in this industry. And it means that it's a lot of individual that we are attending to. And so there'll be a myriad of challenges, of course, of which you mentioned. Some persons, of course, may have it easier. Some persons may have it more difficult. But of course, the climate change is a big issue. Labor is a big issue. Of course, the government mentioned that they are open, they have waived the permit, the regulations surrounding importing of labor. So that is good news. The question is, how much people know that? How much persons do that? And that's the question. Then the issue of praedial larceny is a vexing issue, and I'm happy to hear the plans, but whilst the grass is growing, the horse is starving. At the same time, a big issue that we also face, Kellan, is one of road access, farm road access, not concrete road access, but farm road. A lot of the roads are inaccessible. So even persons who have four-wheel vehicle, they still cannot get to some of these places. So it's difficult to even get the workers to those places. And that is a major, major, major hindrance to grade some roads to have access. That is a significant limiting factor right now, because a lot of lands in the hinterland are not being worked because of this very said issue. So I think that as the government need to look at ways how to partner with these farmers in the different respective areas to create that change, little by little, month by month. It's not difficult, and so through the extension, through all of those areas, we need to have not talk engagement, but real engagement on the ground. Of course, the issue of farm machineries and so on, I see the Ministry of Agriculture has gotten some of that recently to restart the farm machinery. That's a big issue. And so we need to see those things having results on the ground, but it must not be PR events. It must be transition into it. So in 3 months' time, we can see how much acres of land were plowed and how much crops were actually planted. And then another big issue has to do with the market. You see, market regularization. And so I would have had a discussion, and I keep repeating that all the time with the Prime Minister during the MNIB saga, that you need to ensure that the MNIB remains national interest, because this is your main instrument for food security, so that the Ministry of Agriculture, notwithstanding all the efforts they may make, all this, the production that you may take place, doesn't buy a product, cannot cut your invoice to buy cabbage and tomatoes and lettuce. So who buys those products? And so if the farmers don't have markets, then all of this effort will go down in vain. And so the MNIB is an important institution to ensure that all the government institutions, the school feeding program with almost 20,000 students, can get food. This is the risk that we face right now in terms of food. We have a school feeding program that which we all support is good, but where the food coming from? How much local food is in that basket of goods for our children? So there is great opportunity, because once they market, you know, I heard the Prime Minister speak and the Minister of Agriculture, and of course, coming from MNIB myself, then understood this significant with how much finger of banana if a child eat every day, and it's easy to do the maths. But the question is the school feeding program prepared to give all the banana farmers a contract through the MNIB to ensure that ripe bananas is getting to the schools every day and they can consume the banana? Are they willing to do that? Thousands of tissue culture plants have arrived, and we can talk about that in banana and planting. But how much of that production would be contracted to ensure the school children get some of that? And this is where the system that Lorraine is speaking about need to come in, and how much are the lands that can take this banana and this planting that are accessible. And so we are keep marginalizing and losing a lot of lands in woods. And we say, why is in woods? And then what we hear eventually, it's some foreign person, and I would put it like that, would buy those lands secretly. And in the next 10 years, you will see that person developing that land into some villa or something like that, not knowing that that poor farmer really cannot access it and he need to leave. So these things, we have to sit down and have serious conversations with serious actions at the end. And then the last thing, in this first segment of discussion, going back to praedial larceny, the vaccine issue. And you have some important question. We can strengthen the act, we can do all of those things. But a key part, Kellan, is traceability. In Dominica, it's very clear. I have friends there who send me those things. If I, as a person buying, say, cabbages from you as a farmer, when I come, there's supposed to be a receipt. So when I go to the market, go to wherever I go, these officers can interact and say, okay, where did I get this cabbage? I can show them the receipt. They can easily contact you and find out if that is true. This, to me, is so easy and simple to do. You don't even have to go and stick out no farm to look for no thief. Ask you, where did you get this? Where did you get this? What is so difficult? And so I trust that with these new officers that are going to be implemented soon, that will be part of the system. And I trust that these officers are not only compensated properly, but have a good package such that they don't eventually join the police force. Because this is what has been happening, you know. There were about 40 praedial larceny officers before, you know. And what happened? They eventually was absorbed in the police force. So you end up dwindling and lose the officers. And then the same praedial larceny officers was attached to the Ministry of Agriculture before. And then at some way, the police force, I wouldn't say absorbed them, they were pushed onto the police force. And they end up in the police force. And the police force had no budget. You could call them service, as the Prime Minister want to call it now. And there was no budget to support these officers that came over as praedial larceny. So these are some of the administrative challenges. And these are information I had from audience I had with the immediate past commissioner and his high-ranking team, which involve also the current commissioner. And so we are very clear onto the lessons learned and how do we correct this. So how do we prevent this from happening would be very significant. and how do we ensure that they have proper compensation, that they're not lured into going to other types of things and so on. So I would say these are my opening comments, and we
let me bring in Ms. St. Louis here. Of course, you are not a policy maker. You're enforcing policy, but I'm not too sure if you are aware as to the remit of the praedial larceny officers, such that it's protecting against some of the concerns that Senator St. Clair raised here in respect of the police absorbing them at some points, and the fact that we've done this before, we have been down this road before. And so the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what analysis have you been able to do based on the past patterns of hiring praedial larceny officers that don't necessarily remain in the ministry but go on to do other things in law enforcement?
Right. So part of that is ensuring that they are part of the public service, because really they were almost like on the fringe, on the edge of either the public service. They were not really contracted. It was a funny kind of arrangement that was done initially. So now these officers are actually initially, I think they're going to have contracts. I'm not exactly sure. But initially, they will have, I think it's Public Service Commission contracts that will ensure that they can be part of the public service. That would mean that they have all of the benefits of being a public servant, and they will be able to have to go up in terms of their grades. All of the benefits that we as normal public service servants would have, they would also have that. Of course, there are extra things in terms of some of the benefits that they would have because of the nature of their jobs. And so in terms of uniforms and the equipment and boots, that sort of thing, we also assisting them with transportation, not assisting, but providing transportation for each of the districts. We have, I think, 2 vehicles now, and it's already budgeted to have, to at least have 1 or 2 more. And then we have some motorcycles that they will be trained in. Those who are not, who cannot ride or do not have a license, they'll be trained in that would allow them to access the markets and that sort of thing easier. Not necessarily to be, because would be kind of difficult for those officers to be on motorbikes in the field, depending on the field, because a lot of our areas are very mountainous and that sort of thing. But there would be areas where they would be able to monitor, and markets and different areas like where people are selling produce would be areas that they will be able to go over and do exactly what Mr. Sinclair said with the asking for receipts and that sort of thing. We are the ones who will be providing the receipt books to the farmers so that people cannot just go and purchase a receipt book and write up a receipt. It will have to be an official receipt from a registered farmer. So the Ministry of Agriculture will provide those receipt books so that we know that this number is for this farmer, for this registered farmer. And so that we can try to exactly have that system of traceability so that you can find out what's happening. We're also encouraging the farm watch groups to get back together, because as much as the ministry can do, as much as the police can do, as much as a praedial larceny unit can do, if farmers within an area are also looking out for each other in that area, it makes it a lot easier to monitor what is happening. A farmer cannot be on his field every day, every minute of the day to watch. So we are also getting involved in and facilitating that the formation or reformation of farm watch groups. We also assist farmers with, if they want to have security cameras and so come in, we provide concessions for them to do that. And our praedial larceny officers now would go and assist them in putting up those cameras and to find the best place, the right angles and all of that, so that they can they can try to have some semblance of safety. But we also have to look at personal responsibility. And a lot of the times, some of the people who are doing these acts are actually farmers. You know, some farmers are actually making a problem that is already big into a bigger issue by either purchasing stuff, things that are produce that they know is stolen, or actively facilitating and assisting other people to steal products from other farmers. And so we would really like to ask, because as much as government, as much as the ministry, as much as any of us would try to assist to alleviate this problem, we would really need for farmers themselves to be each other's keepers and to, of course, be each other's brothers, and try to ensure that any kind of nefarious activity like that is happening, that you either report it, you know, that you don't encourage it, that you come together to ensure that your produce is safe.
Absolutely. Yeah, and of course, we will get to some of the viewer comments. But the other issue that we have to speak to here, and that has to do with efforts to ramp up for security. Now, I know that there was an agro a processing facility that was recently opened in the Lacalome area of St. David. Yes?
Well, it's not quite open.
It's not quite open yet.
It was recently acquired.
Okay.
Because it's on government land, but the building was owned by someone else.
Okay.
And so we recently acquired the building and reacquired the land. And so we are in the process of doing the external works now to ensure that water, because there's an area at the back of the building where the drains were not properly done and all of that. So we had to go in and do some external works to ensure that the place that is conducive for the activities that you want to do there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when will be the scheduled opening? Do you have a sense of when that will be? And what will that facility attempt to do in respect of building food security capacity? And are we going to be seeing, that's just one facility that the government has been talking about. I don't know, of course, we know of the tissue culture facility as well, that is in train. But outside of those two facilities and outside of what else is happening in Maribo, what else is being done right now to enhance local food production capacity?
Okay, so let me start off with the agro-processing plant. So the agro-processing plant is going to provide an avenue for agro-processors who do not have the adequate space, the adequate equipment. There are lots of people who have very, very good products, but they only have their kitchens, you know, they don't have the correct facilities to expand, especially. And so that facility is going to be used by agro-processors to come in. I'm sure there will be a small cost, but to come in and use the facilities to produce whatever their products are. So that is a main. So they would have different lines of production that people can come in and be able to use. Quite a bit of the equipment for that facility has already been purchased through the UBEC CIRC project. That was a food security project that ended at the end of March of this year. And so we have to get some still, but some of the equipment that is already purchased. And so as soon as the external works are done there, then we will be able to get inside and do the necessary cleanup and setup for the inside of the building.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In terms of the other question that you asked, what is government doing outside of having the tissue culture lab, which will really increase production and have clean planting materials available for farmers, we also have many other programs. One of the projects that that we're working on right now is we took a look at what the food import bill is and what products, what are some of the items that we import most of or import a lot of that we can grow ourselves. And so we looked at things like carrots, like onions, white potatoes, leafy vegetables, because we have lots of different types of lettuce and all of that is still being imported, and we can at least produce. We're looking at at 30%, and then we can go up. But to try to see how much of that we can produce ourselves, or those products that we can produce ourselves, so that we can reduce our food import bill, and of course be a little bit more resilient to any kind of external shocks. So those are some of the things that we're going to do. We also have many other programs and other projects where we are providing irrigation supplies for farmers. We are, we constantly looking at ways to ensure that our farmers are supported. We, as part of the food security project, also, we have already provided and started to repair all of our propagation stations to make sure that those are in the proper facilities. The infrastructure is repaired enough so that we can provide planting material for our farmers. In terms of trainings, and so I'm sure if you look on our Facebook page or any of our other social media pages, we're constantly providing training sessions for farmers on how to produce with the climate changing, what different strategies they can use to reduce on water usage, to reduce the use of chemical fertilizers and other chemicals that we put in our food, so that if we put together an entire integrated system, then there isn't so much of a use for you to buy so much products to produce, and therefore as you reduce your cost of production, then you can the amount of money that is staying with you is more, and that would assist in the farmers being able to produce more and being able to increase on the levels of their livelihoods.
So let us talk about let me bring in Senator Sinclair. Senator Sinclair, let us pick up on what the Chief Extension Officer articulated here in respect of building a food security capacity. Of course, we've heard about the tissue culture facility, the private-public partnership agro facility in the La Colombe area that's now in train, and the other youth. I know Ms. St. Louis didn't mention this, but of course the youth and agriculture, I saw that as well in respect of what you've been doing there. Senator Sinclair, if you want to give the administration advice, and as I'm sure you do as the farmers' representative, in respect of what is being done on the governance side of things to ramp up food security, what advice would you be giving them now?
Well, I mean, it's. I would give it in a shell, because once I go to too much of detail, then it becomes a consultancy.
And they might have to pay you for that.
Of course, a lot of money, But of course, I mean, yeah. But I would say, I mean, if we are serious, as I would have mentioned to the previous administration, and I would have mentioned that in a consultation that was held recently, looking at the private sector engagement for food security, agriculture, etc. We need to look at legislation. We need to look at a supportive legislation that would be able to guarantee a suite of interventions and protect that, such that any investor, a farmer, any other person wanting to get into any part of the food business or the agriculture value chain, they can able to reliably do that. So, for example, you can outline in your legislation, like the U.S. Farm Bill, you outline what you're going to do at poultry, at livestock, at agro-processing, a suite of interventions which would involve not only about this issue um what do you call this thing again, Lauren, you kept by you every time for that, to get discounts, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, concessions. Yeah, is because every time you say, yeah, to get concession, I cannot try to forget these words, but concessions. But it's more than that. It's to create a sort of enabling environment that also incentivizes its own self. So how does, for example, the supermarkets participate in this? So they may need to improve on the cold storage, maybe the packaging, maybe the amount of money they spend in marketing of that, they can get that right off in some of the taxes so that they could be able to drive more local consumption. So I'm just giving some broad examples of that intervention. And I think if it's legislated, then government come, government go, public servants go, public servants come. There is something to work with. And of course, it can be improved over time. So that's one aspect. Inside of that, we need to, which I've called for before, and I continue to call for, we need to have a national food agency or something or some committee looking at that. As I said previously, this issue of food security is no different to crime. You have the police force, is no different to NADMA dealing with the issue of climate change and bad weather. And of course, lack of food is a big issue. And so whether or not we want to rename Ministry of Agriculture to Ministry of Food Production, or have a department comprised of main stakeholders, we need to address this thing like that. Because what happens when the crisis comes, we call all the stakeholders, hey, give us an idea. Oh no, what is the idea you have? These ideas could have been streamlined in that legislative framework as a plan. So we have a national food plan for a crisis, and you could easily pull it. That's the next one. Then we need to ensure that we have key farmers in different parts of this country that who have capacity and historical production records, whether it's in root crops, especially, which can be good resilient crops, whether in the leafy vegetables. So you may have maybe 500 farmers broken up into different parts throughout the country, and these persons are serviced and monitored, and at least 50% of our food production is guaranteed by these 500 or 1,000 farmers. It brings us to an important point, Kellan. Do we have enough persons working in the Ministry of Agriculture to do this job? And it's really hurts because the police has increased their numbers every day. They hire some new police workers. Many of the other ministries, I hear boasting, the ministers boasting of the hiring new persons, in education. But I'm yet to see this hiring of persons in the Ministry of Agriculture. A lot of have retired. If you go in the fisheries department, it's about 2 persons a day running the whole fisheries department. And I have no problem if we have to bring back some of our retired persons in the meantime to get it done. Because when you have a crisis, you pull all the stops you have. That's what leadership does. You don't wait for everything to fall down and say, oh boy, we should have really bring in. And then what happens in the consultation? These retirees, past specialists would come in and give all these suggestions. And then you say, but if we didn't know, we cannot make joke with food. That's another part. The other thing we need to do, Kellan, we need to get our homes, our community, our household to be able to use more local products, able to know how to utilize it. So whether we have to use the YouTube videos and whatever it is, and maybe you need to do a program on that. Maybe every month you see special dishes being prepared, and that could be a way of helping self-promote. Apart from those things I said earlier about the roads and so on, but these I would say are some of the immediate. Now, for example, in poultry, which is a big issue, I sat down with a poultry farm and we work out the maths that under $1 million each year, the government can put some intervention to offset the cost of the poultry feed, right? Which is a big issue. Now, we may say, okay, fine, let us do this innovation with the fish waste and this waste, and yes, we don't say no. But every time, sometime you come in with that position to the government, some smart person comes up with a smart idea to divert it. Not divert it, but add it to the mix. So at the end of the day, we could get more improvement. So poultry is an area we need to address. You have about $40–50 million worth of poultry imported. If you spend $1 million or $2 million to just help to reduce the cost of that final product, and you work with the supermarkets and all of those folks to be able to reduce the cost. How much local poultry are we buying in the school feeding program? How much? Government has to change its own procurement policy and not be a hypocrite to progress. So, for example, how much money is government spending on food in a different institution that is not local? How much farmers have they contracted to ensure that this food is provided? How much? If you're not doing that, you cannot expect the other private persons to take that risk that you're not even taking. And these are some of the issues I think that, and there is no belief. I don't think that there is. I mean, I've been around this business for a while, and people don't believe that farmers can do anything. Farmers can produce. I remember, Kevin, that's the last piece. After Hurricane Ivan, I saw where Grenada was not even exporting bananas. And sorry, Michael, but he had to leave because he was part of getting banana back up. And then we had the issue with the black sticker token, and it went down. And after Ivan, I was involved in the whole team at the MNIB where we were exporting up to 800–900 boxes of bananas every week on a boat to Trinidad. That went on for almost a year. And what happened eventually? The same Windfresh, which had challenges with quality in the other countries, start dumping their bananas into Trinidad and undersell the market. So we are just killing our own self. So the point I'm trying to make is that farmers can produce. And then the other part we need to also look at, and that's a serious issue, because I was involved in a program looking at the MNIB with fruit, doing fruit bowls. So we're organizing the farmers to do the different melons and all of those things. And we discovered quickly, within 1 month, we could not get the seeds. So whilst we had everything set up, we had engagement with the nurseries and all of those things, the seeds by the private importers, because they have different, what they call it, they have restrictions. So like this is the dealership for this brand and all those stuff. We had to go to a private individual and engage that person to bring in the seeds in sufficient quantities. And even that person started having problems. So I say this to say that if we don't have planting material adequate in the country, we would also run aground. Of course, somebody could debate and say, well, you know, this genetically modified and the terminating gene and so on. But the reality is that this is what exists. The question is, do we have the material there so that they can able to continue to plant, particularly the vegetables part? I mean, the root crops and those other things we can do. And I've trust with the tissue culture lab, we can able to incentivize this thing. But we need to have a key set of crops, as Lauren mentioned, which I have no problem with. But it must be driven by the market, the quantities, but of course the price, because the price must be affordable also for that to happen, because at the end of the day, the farmers need to make money. And so we are with the crop compensation schedule, because that had to be tied closely to cost of production. And then the market must be able to respond such that the farmer can make money. And then you could have the GDP coming in with more confidence and say, okay, I'm willing to put in X amount of dollars, because they need help. Mr. Komabach is there. He believes, he understands, but I don't think the board there understands and believe in the farmers. In fact, when you look at the report of the fiscal responsibility, now the medium-term report actually that the government produced for the last budget, they mentioned specifically that GDP need to get back to what it's supposed to have been. Who is in charge of that? The government. So the point is that if the leaders of agriculture don't sit down and really deal with these matters, but tie up themselves in doing all other things. And that is why I believe that if you have this food production department, a food production minister, or something specifically looking at that over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to be having this discussion here in next year.
Correct. And it seems to me as though every time that there is some sort of crisis, I remember a conversation of this very nature when the Ukraine war happened.
During
COVID.
No, but even when this and Vincent Soufre had an issue, that was another.
Correct, because we were importing a lot of agricultural products from our neighbors to the
Yeah.
north. So,
So we
and
have to
again,
stop that.
we are such, we have to, so we really have to stop that. What the man in from Bush Grove that said that you have to stop that, right? Is he from Bush Grove? I don't know. I know he's from St. Andrew.
Yeah, because
Um,
Kellan, the fact is we have the capacity. Some of the great farmers, I mean the Cardell Fair, the BJ, we can name them into closure. They exist. The farmers are there. Even if they might be aged, they are there. They are there. Even if labor is an issue, they are there and they have been producing. I mean, so all they need is to just have that coordinated belief and support and push. You know, I don't think the ministry has a lot, speak a lot of training. All those things is nice. But you see, that is one aspect. If you keep doing that, at the end of the day, people need to eat every day. So why do you keep training how to do things right? Where's the food? Look at St. Vincent. St. Vincent, I mean, they get to the end product so quick. We need to go and learn what is happening there.
yeah, no, absolutely. And speaking about that, speaking of building capacity, marketing border, I do not know if Ms. St. Louis is in a position to answer that question. Where are we with that, Senator Sinclair? Maybe you can. I don't think, Ms. St. Louis, I don't know what your remit can be on the question of marketing board. We saw some pronouncements, but there has been no, at least physical progress that I've been seeing so far. So where are we with that? Do you know?
Well, what I know would be what has been made public, and that
Okay.
is that the new body will be should be up and running by the end of the third quarter of this year. But I
Okay.
also know that they have been having consultations with different stakeholders in the industry. So I imagine that cabinet would have received reports as to what is happening.
You see,
So,
Kellan,
Senator?
the contradiction, Kellan, of that approach. And I mean, I'm not doing this, saying this because I'm looking at this thing from the reality. The contradiction is that having MNIB operate as a private-public partnership and all those things sounds nice. The question I would ask, which I've asked before, what would this institution be doing different? And how would it be engaging the market different to what the current private sector persons involved, whether it's the Andal, the Food Fair, the Real Value, etc., Rams, Supermarket, etc., Calico, how is this institution going to be operating and engaging the market differently? And if not, then why are we wasting resources into creating a competition within that sector? You know, why is you doing that? When you look at the model of these private businesses, 80% of the food products is imported. So the question arises, where is the food that we want this new MNIB to purchase? Where would it be coming from? Are they going to be importing it, or is it going to come from the farmers? And if it's going to come from the farmers, how are these farmers organized in such a manner to have all of these things done? And so, as farmers has been saying, in terms of all of this pronouncement that's supposed to come on later in this year, is that we need to know now, what are these products? What are these things that we want to produce? Because this organization would come in and behave just like all the other private sector and say, look, in 3 months we can't get anything, and these people and these farmers and them ain't ready yet. And of course, it doesn't take 3 months because you have to prepare the land, you have to get the seedlings, you have to take care of it, which could take you almost 8 to 10 months. So I'm putting this out as a disclaimer only. So I don't want to hear none of this old talk when that time comes, because this institution should be, if you have a management issue, what does hotel does? What hotel does? They build and hire management capacity to outfit and to manage it. So if you have the capacity in terms of all the infrastructure, get a management contract to come and manage it. Simple. You don't need to private sector. You manage it to give you the results which you need. That's what you do. You get a management firm who know about these things, because that is the most strategic approach. The government is going to lose control. Why is it government have to buy back Grenada? It's not just about the act and what was established with the agreement. They should not buy back and see what would happen. Oh, public-private partnership. See what happens to us. energy security, food security, they're all in it. So then we will do the same with the police. Let's make public-private partnership because the police are solving crime. It's your responsibility to make food available, to make sure the place is safe. These are key things our government do. Anyways.
No, absolutely. Very salient points. Very salient points raised here. We do want to get to some viewer comments. Just bear with me 1 second here. Let me get to some of the viewer comments. And while we're at it, Senator Sinclair, one of the things that I was hoping that the minister that I was going to press the minister on was the whole issue of the concerns raised by some of the farmers up there in Maribo. That is something that I was going to.
I could speak to that, you know. I could speak to that too. In fact, I want to speak to that. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Because I would say, I mean, I have been aware of the general issue about these water challenges year and year. Sometime last year, a farmer called me from that area. And what I do when I get those calls, Kellan, I won't say I investigate, but I speak to many people. I mean, within the ministry, within the outside, so I get general knowledge. And because I tell farmers, I don't go and speak about issues and then look like a fool at the end of the day. You know, I need to make sure that I have this thing covered. In some cases, we don't even need to speak because I understand how the issue that we want to solve is how does our farmers get water? 2, how does the scheme, agriculture scheme gets water? That is the 2 issues. And I think as big people, and I've expressed that to Ms. St. Louis and some of our colleagues, and even to the PS personally, and even to the minister in Slight, and say, look, we need to find a solution to this thing, notwithstanding how we may feel about it. We have national responsibility. And so, of course, when I do my understanding, there was a function the day of the farm machinery, and I had an engagement. Actually, I met the farmer involved. And I engaged him. I said, brother, what's going on? And he explained to me, he's actually a worker in the scheme. So he actually works in the scheme where water is also a challenge and stuff. And he said that, look, they said that some Mr. Gibbs, sorry if I call the name, but would have tell them something was going to fix, etc., etc. And to he is like, they said they would fix it. And so he don't have no responsibility. And I'm saying to him, even if I'm speaking to other farmers, the farmers also have a role in collectively supporting that general good. It's not just because they're not paying for the service. So that's in the other parties. The ministry we know need to get the water to get their plants organized. So I say to them, I say, look, is there a way you can structure the water coming in at different times and so on? I don't get the sense that there is a genuine attempt to really sit down and engage and listen. I then engage the PS immediately. I say, PS, come. I say, the farmers used to be cleaning the dam. So if the dam is part of the problem, farmers, you guys need to organize yourself and clean the dam to help with the process. Then I hear something with Nawasa cut the water. Then I think they say, no, Nawasa cut the water, etc. But what I learned from the PS, which was very good information that I don't think come out at all publicly, is that apparently after burial, so that's a new addition outside of the seasonality of the weather, after burial, a stone fell down in the dam. And to remove that stone is very difficult because, you know, heavy machine might be difficult. So they hire some person, I don't want to call his name, to blast the stone and to break it up so that once the stone come out, then more water could be in the dam. This has not been achieved. So immediately I would say the government need to ensure that whoever was contracted to do this work, that they do the work. That's the first thing. And then the next part is the pipes are bust. I believe the farmers should pay, if it's $100 or $200 every year as a fee, I believe that, which could contribute towards maintenance and so on, and a team be set up, whether we could use the farm school students, which can learn about irrigation and systems, and they can able to maintain the stuff. So that is on that part. When I speak to other the farmers, this thing is not about politics, as was made to be understood. Because I spoke to the gentleman, and the gentleman has been farming in front of Maribo for 24 years. using water free, no rent of the land, anything. He has new lands that he purchased, and we have to commend him for that. And so in that area now, he said, look, the minister tell him, well, you could do your thing on your own because you don't need this land there. They have to use the land for something. I say, but I mean, he said, well, the other man is there too. And this other man, why they don't move him? No, this other guy, maybe he have no other lands to function and he had to feed his family. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't spoken to this other gentleman. So when I analyze everything, I then got a call from another farmer in the area. And he said that the minister and them were up there last week, a week before Friday, and they come now on the ground for the first time, after about a month of this halabaloo, on the ground now trying to understand what is happening. And then when you understand what is happening, there are folks down in Sab who are receiving water, using it in the home, I understand. This is untreated water. That should stop. Yeah. So there was a meeting sometime last year, but to me, instead of that meeting, sit down and try to form a solution, it ended up become a political engagement. That is what I will say. And somebody could prove me differently, because what are the outcome from that meeting to genuinely solve the problem? There are broken lines, so how are we going to fix the broken lines? How the farmers are going to be engaged? Farmers, you have to make sure the dams are clean. So this matter to me is not being handled properly. And I think we are all big people, and the ministry need to show some more maturity in this matter. The farmers at the same time has to come together and provide whatever support in the clearing. And I am on the sidelines watching this very closely. From speaking to the PS, I got a very good assurance that the matter was going to be addressed properly from the thing. So I think at the same time, we need to not further aggravate the discourse, but let the parties who are supposed to be working together work and resolve this matter. And whoever got the contract to blast the stone, please blast the stone, because I don't really want to call your name on this forum. Do the government work and let us prevent all of these complications. But as we move forward, Kellan, I want to see that this matter become more complex, because recently we passed the water resource management bill, and part of that has to do with persons, one, who access water has to pay for the use of the water. Right? So this is important. So why is Nawasa might be giving you overflow and all of those things? Nawasa itself has to be paying for water that they will supply to our pipe. Whether the rate go up or not, that's a different discussion. But it means also that the farmers, etc., ministry who is accessing that same water, right? Even if it's untreated, it doesn't matter, we'll have to pay. So the point is, we need to start coming together now and solve this problem before it go down the road and have a problem. Because at the end of the day, 40 farmers, 30 farmers, not being able to produce the carrots, the same carrot we're talking about.
That we need. That we especially now. Yeah.
So yeah. But I wanted to share that, because I thought I haven't had a public statement on it, but I have been researching it, and I feel comfortable that we should be able to find a solution now, particularly after speaking here today.
And Senator Sinclair, someone just sent us a message saying that there is a national town hall that's happening on the 23rd of April, as advertised, I believe, by the Office of the Prime Minister, it looks like. Topics of discussion, the new MNIB matters, other matters of national interest at the St. John's Anglican School. So that is happening. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but that's happening next week. I'm not sure if you received an invitation or got wind of this, but that is just coming in on our WhatsApp here about that. So perhaps maybe a showing from you at that meeting. Again, I'm not a government representative, so I should not be the one inviting you to this.
Yeah, no, well, I will tell you some. If I'm not personally invited to some of these engagements, and I'll say this public again, I have tried to not appear such that to sort of prejudice in any way the discussion. The farmers are able and strong enough to speak what I'm speaking, because I'm speaking is their speaking. I sometimes tend to avoid some of these engagements. If I'm to appear on a panel, fine, I would attend. If I'm not going to appear on a panel, I tend to leave the farmer, let the farmer handle himself, because on the output, I was still able to speak in that space for them and on their behalf. So I try to not prejudice, because I don't want to be in a session sometime and you feel as if, the senator, they let talk, let the senator talk. No, the farmers, what I'm saying a lot of the times, 90% is what the farmers are telling me, calling me, discussing. What a lot
and
of
it is
persons,
what you're ventilating those issues in the Senate as well.
yeah, but some people don't believe that because they're not in the right places. They're in the wrong place. So they would never hear when the rain is falling because the sun is shining.
Yeah.
But I'm where the sun, I am where the sun is shining, I'm where the rain is shining. Because I live this and I understand this very well. The farmers know that. And I in no way will be doing things contrary. I mean, they may want me to do more. But some of the things, as I say sometime to my good friend Senator Luis, we are not a union yet, so we wouldn't be on Mayday marching for water, marching for praedial larceny. He say, well, don't worry, you'll soon understand.
All right. So let us get to some viewer comments. Marcel Belma is saying, time for a serious shift. We need Filipino, Haitian, Mexican, Cuban, and other farm laborers interested in work. They should be recruited to work with interested farmers in Grenada. Ms. St. Louis, is that something that the ministry is looking into to treat with the labor shortages that exist in agriculture? Because there is a view that perhaps a lot of young people are just not interested in going on a farm anymore, notwithstanding that, yes, there are young farmers in Grenada. But is that something that you're looking into as well?
Well, the ministry isn't looking into finding the labor for farmers. What the government has done is that it has relaxed or removed some of the labor, the visa thing, the restrictions for the permit to work. So the farmers can find they can research and find the people. The Ministry of Labor will do the necessary checks in terms of criminal backgrounds and that sort of thing. But then the person who is bringing that person into work, they are no longer going to be responsible for getting their work permits. They're not going to be, they don't have to pay for it. So that is how that would work. The ministry will not be engaging in finding labor for
on behalf of farmers. Okay, so farmers have to do that.
The environment for we reached out to the Ministry of Labor to see how it can be, how the farmers can be assisted with labor, and that there is a solution that we've come up with. We've also tried to assist with having some trained groups in each parish to do some, trained in agricultural work. But as stated before, and I'm sure on other platforms, that the interest in performing agricultural labor really is not there in Grenada in a large amount, in large enough amounts for the farmers to be able to be satisfied with what is happening. And if you look at it, the pay is quite good. For 5 hours of work, you get between $60 and $100, a day. And it's about the same thing if you look at a laborer in construction, say, for example, but with a longer day. Because, most construction people would start under $100 or $120 for the most for a day. And so there's a bit of a culture that we need to re-educate our young people in, so that they do not see agriculture as being a job for stupid people or for the people who can't do anything else, but it's a lucrative opportunity for employment, and you learn so many skills and so many other things that would be really beneficial for you later on in life, and you can also earn a really good living. So as I said, the Ministry of Agriculture will not be finding laborers for people. You can find the people, and the Ministry of Labor would now
will facilitate the process for you.
Right.
Senator Sinclair, is that something you've been hearing from farmers as well? Questions of that labor support that they need to supplement their work on their farms.
Yeah, remember I raised that as one of the issues only when I speak about the challenges outside of climate change, etc. And I think maybe we need a special segment to look at that, look at what other models are. But I want to say quickly, for a point of clarification, it will be remiss of me not to say this as part of the lawmaking mechanism in the country, that this $60 minimum wage in agriculture is not for 5 hours. Before, it was whatever the rate was, $35 or how much was for 5 hours. When this was changed, when you look at the schedule, and I had that personal discussion with the labor commissioner on that matter, and it's a concern that I raised, and and what I was told, and I would explain it strategically, is that it's 8 hours. When you look at the schedule, that labor code schedule with the rates, the agriculture one is $60 and it's for 8 hours. I was told that agriculture don't have enough production and we need to have them workers work for 8 hours such that the farmers will get good production. That was a decision taken. These are endorsed by the cabinet. So this didn't even come to the parliament, that schedule, not if you don't have to, because based on regulations. So it is very well clear of the leadership that this is what is done. The 4 farmers are catching the nenen with this 4 and 5 hours because this is what the workers will know as it is. If you have to go more, the story goes up because you will say, well, they're breaking the law. They need to do the worker. They need to work for the 8 hours. But, the farmers, they need to get their work done. So they just have to buy the bullet and take what they get. So, meaning 2 things. One, this rate should have been an hourly rate, right? Which should have given the farmers and the worker much more flexibility in the execution. So we have failed in that regards. And so even if we want to bring in foreign labor for these 8 hours, which is supposed to do according to the law, and we could be happy to do that now because we could work with people, our locals will run away further because they ain't go work for this 8 hours at the $60. So this is the reality of what the legislation is, even if the practice may be a little bit different. And so we have again robbed agriculture from, you see, every time we come to a lot of things in agriculture, regulations and things to make it do better, the leadership always falls short. We could do it later. We change all kind of law. We do all kind of stuff. The crop compensation, we had a meeting with the minister and the PS and the legal council about a week or 2 ago. And I was happy to say that the compensation issue, and I was happy to hear Lauren say they have. I'm happy to hear that it's been addressed because there was good discussion and assurance that will be done. So farmers, we know that glory days would come in May. But the fact is, we need to do it more concertedly about things that matters, things that would make the difference. This is what is little things. So sometimes the town halls and all those big meetings is good, but when you go in the small pockets and you listen and you get the real details, this is what, because sometimes the real people who come to the town halls, the real people, even sometimes they come, they cannot say explicitly what they want to say. And so the question is, where else? Where are we getting this information? And then even at the leadership end, they need to listen to persons, the technical persons like Lauren and them, who is on the ground, who get any feedback and appreciate what they are saying, because they are trying. Don't say that they are trying. But if the top and the decision makers are not endorsing it, then we have a problem. And that is why it's my job to know all of these things and to help along all processes in whatever way we could make these things happen for a better Grenada. That's what we want at the end of the day. Not because we just want to come here and old talk and chat. That's not what we're doing that for at all.
Absolutely. So let us get to some closing comments because we are at the 2 hour mark now. Viewers, Sorry, we can't get to all of your comments, but we really have to close the program. We are at the 2-hour mark. But Lauren, I want to get to you for some closing comments. And again, I know that Ghana was piloting this food security initiative for the region. I understand that they were looking at sort of assessing where they are with that. I'm not too sure if that's something Grenada has been looking into with supporting Ghana on. But in your closing, can you speak to just the overall food security picture of the state, what the ministry is doing to close those gaps? I mean, you spoke about a lot of those earlier as well. But this period, I think, is like another COVID period in the sense that we have these threats of tariffs. That's certainly going to up, and that's on top of the inflationary pressures we have. I mean, every time I come to Grenada and I go to the supermarket, I gauge the prices of certain products against what the prices were on my last visit, and it's never going down, at least for some of them. So I want you to speak to those in closing.
Okay, so like I said before, the whole of the food production and all of the different machinations that come with it, we have to look at that as an entire system, and that is where I think we have fallen short on a lot of times. So where things link, who they link with, how they affect the other thing, is something that we really have to take into account as we go forward. I mentioned many of the initiatives that government is doing right now to ensure that farmers get the support. I'm not saying that the ministry will always get it right, but we will always try to ensure that we support our farmers in the best way and in the space that we currently have. So we have our officers on the ground now. Our officers are always, I mean, not today, but our officers are always out, and they are also at our district offices. So farmers can also go to those district offices or even to the Ministry of Agriculture, the main office itself, to give some ideas, because we do listen and we do understand that the people who are in it, they feel it in a different way. And so we know that they have a lot of the solutions that we're looking into. We now have we will be rolling out a food production plan, and we have begun to develop that. What we don't want is for us to just have our food production plan and to give it to farmers. And so sometime in May, we will also have some stakeholder consultations with the farmers to show them what we have. And so they can tell us, this would be better, this won't work, we've tried this already, all of that kind of feedback, so that we can get the crops that we were just speaking about, to get those crops planted. We are in agreement with Senator Sinclair in terms of having a core group of farmers that will produce each of the different crops in different amounts. And hopefully, as we work towards the new MNIB construct, then we will be able to have those kind of contractual arrangements with farmers and that marketing entity, and even have, in some cases, because I'm not sure how that would work, but even have contracts between the farmers and the individual buyers. Currently, that does not really exist. You have understandings, but you don't have contracts. And either side of this would have to relook a lot of the times how they produce, in terms of the farmers, what they produce, the quality, the quantities, and a lot of times being able to work together as associations or groups in order to fulfill a lot of these contracts. So I think at the end of this entire discussion, I'd like to say thank you so much for your invitation. I know it was not necessarily for me, but for the Ministry of Agriculture on a whole. And we also welcome any other kind of engagements if you would like to. we can have, further engagements on this. And I would also like to again wish yourself, Senator Sinclair, and the listening and watching, the viewing public, a very happy and safe Easter and a really blessed rest of the year.
Well, the invitation was not for you initially. It was for your boss, the minister, the policymaker. So when you see the minister, I'm sure maybe he's listening. Maybe I don't. Maybe not. Minister, the invitation is open on the Bub Report. I would be surprised if you dodged the Bub Report. It's not unlike you, sir, to dodge the Bub Report. Was it because you're afraid of your fellow constituency buddy, Mr. Michael Batiste, that you didn't show up today? I don't know, Minister. I don't know. I'm directing this at you, but certainly, Ms. St. Louis, thank you so much for representing the ministry, because we need to continue to have those conversations. I think critically, as Tessa Barry said, yes, there are these wonderful plans, but I think it honestly comes down to implementation and sustainability. How sustainable can these plans be, right? And that, I think, is so important. Senator Sinclair, over to you, sir, for some closing comments.
Yeah, thank you. And I must say initially that we thank you so much for having agriculture on the front burner, because, as I say, agriculture is what is going to shape the next 5 to 10 years in the world.
Yes.
Because you remember we had the green revolution, we had different revolution, and I think the food revolution is what we have right in front of us. How do we feed these billions of persons through the world amidst all of these challenges? Of course, I want to commend all our farmers locally and even through the world who continue amidst all of these adversities to toil away and to produce, whether in Ukraine or wherever they are, because they have challenges too. And in our own backyard, we need to keep resilience. We have the hurricane season is coming close to us, so we need to keep planting all the root crops and building all those resilience, storing up our seeds and all of those things. These are key things that we have to ensure that we can have as we move forward. I saw Dr. Barry's comment about the nutrition. Of course, yes, in nutrition security also, Tessa, we fully endorse that. And I think the education in the children, because we need to get them involved, not just about the farming directly, but that narrative. We have in that debate, what do they think? What does a 10-year-old or 15-year-old think about food and nutrition security, and how do we get these persons, maybe some of the 4-Hers, to have a program? We only hear us. Let's get these young people who don't know about politics yet to talk their heart out, because they have views, they have thoughts, and so on. And I would like to hear what they have to say. And to my good friend Michael Batiste, I think that you should have stayed in. It'd be a good debate. I guess you don't think I'm a good debater. Of course, he has views. And so I think you're robust, Brother Batiste.
And he also has institutional knowledge, regardless of what you think of Mr. Batiste.
Exactly.
He served in the Ministry of Agriculture, and he also is a farmer. He has that lived experience as a farmer. He rears pigs. He has other crops that he does and cultivates and so on. So he's a man of the land. So I think, regardless of what you think of him, his opinions in that space is very valid.
Yeah. So you see my problem. When the farmer is present, they don't want me around. So I should have been the one going. It's just a joke. All right, so thank you so much, Kellan. And of course, we are willing all the time. I appreciate, reaching out to us from the community, because we have views on a lot of things, that affect us in different ways. But the labor issue, I think, is a matter that we should maybe have a dialogue on and see how even other parts of the region is dealing with that. Along with labor, particularly with Labor Day coming up soon. That is a big issue, because if we don't have labor to feed ourselves, it's equal to not having food.
And food security is national security, It really is
food
national security.
When there is no food, they say man get hungry and they get angry. They say
and man turn beast.
Angry man.
It's an angry man. This is true.
Yeah, a woman too can be hungry if they can get food. All right, so Lauren, you take care. Have a good evening, a good weekend, and we start to work next week.
Yes.
Not next week.
Absolutely. This week. Yes.
Yeah.
Ms. St. Louis and Senator Sinclair, thank you so much for appearing on the Bub Report this week. Viewers and listeners, this is a very important conversation on the state of agriculture and food security in Grenada. Obviously, it would have been, better if we had the minister here, the Minister for Agriculture, but certainly Ms. St. Louis did make a good representation on behalf of the ministry, articulating what is happening there as we face, whether we like it or not, food security challenges with everything that's happening around the world geopolitically, on top of what was already happening before. So again, there is a town hall meeting happening next week. We'll be looking closely at that to see what pronouncements will be made with respect to the new structure of a marketing board. We understand it will be a private-public partnership. That town hall will be taking place at the St. John's Anglican School in St. John, so we in Guelph, St. John. So we will be waiting with bated breath to see what pronouncements will be coming down the pike at that event. Of course, viewers and listeners, next week the program will not be live. The program will be pre-recorded, but we will be having a program next week as well. So on behalf of the producers of the Bub Report, once again, your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bub, wishing you all a wonderful weekend, a wonderful Easter weekend. My godson has been dedicated in Grenada today, so I want to pay a special tribute to him and shout outs to him. And I'm not going to publicly name them. I don't think they want me to do that, but just to publicly congratulate my godson on his dedication in Grenada today. Welcome to the world. Welcome to the world, young man. So, folks, again, on behalf of the producers of the Bub Report, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bub. We will see you next week for another installment of the program. Take care. Bye-bye.
We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
The leader of the opposition, you have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style. And so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
Why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
This is a very interesting question.
The Bub Reports with Dr. Kellon Bub. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
Hi everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bub Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.